Hello and welcome to a genteel black hole, the home of my bookish rambles. My name's Ali, and yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I'm a little bit rusty with this whole YouTube thing, so please, Panda Companion. Anyway, if you saw the text post I made last month, then you'll know that throughout most of the year, really, I've been struggling with fatigue, which it's looking like that is a symptom of my poor mental health. I did get some blood tests with the GP just to make sure there were no underlying physical things, and all of those tests came back normal. So yeah, I guess it's the brain that's abnormal. um, anyway, I won't bore you with all of the details there, but just to reassure you that I'm safe and I'm as well as can be, and I am on the way to starting therapy. So I'm hoping that that's gonna help me kind of get the old brain box back on track. But in the meantime, I thought I would try and ease myself back into BookTube with a slightly lower effort and more casual video than I had been accustomed to making. So rather than trying to do a comprehensive October wrap up, I am going to just pick one book, one film, and one album that I enjoyed during the month. So, this being a BookTube channel, my favourite book of the month seems to be a good place to start, and that was The Wind's 12 Quarters by Ursula K. Le Guin. This book actually has a second short story collection as well, The Compass Rose, which I haven't read yet, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed The Wind's 12 Quarters. It's a short story collection, and it covers the first decade and a bit of her published work. So starting from like 1962 up to 1974. I thought it was a really fascinating read, not least because the stories are presented in roughly chronological order, which means that you can really appreciate how her writing developed over those first, like, 13 years. The book has 17 short stories, I think, and she wrote an introduction as well to each one of them, which is also really interesting just to hear her own perspective on her career and her writing. And I mean, some of my favourite quotes from the book came not from the stories, but from her introductions. I do think that the first half of the stories are, they're good. There's no particular duds in the book, but once you reach the late 60s into the early 70s, that's, I think, when she really found whatever it is that made her work truly special and unique. And yeah, some of those stories in the second half of the book are just fantastic, and some of my favourite Le Guin that I've read, and I've read a fair amount at this point. In fact, I've always said that my favourite Le Guin stuff is her fantasy work in the Earthsea series. I'm currently rereading through that series. I've got one book left in my reread of that. And by contrast, I've always kind of struggled to get into her sci-fi stuff in the sort of the Hainish universe. So reading this short story collection was really interesting because a lot of my favorite stories ended up being the ones set in the Hainish universe, which is kind of making me eager to revisit the novels that I may have not appreciated as much as I could do. I won't force myself through them if I don't get on with them again, but it certainly makes me keen to revisit them. If I had to pick any particular highlights from the book, I would say my three favourite stories were Vaster Than Empires and More Slow, which is set in the Hainish universe, and it's a story about a group of explorers, one of whom has a kind of empathic ability, and when they encounter what appears to be a sentient forest, he it nearly drives him mad. It's a really, really atmospheric and unsettling story that I found really gripping and fascinating. And yeah, absolutely brilliant. Another favourite from the book is, of course, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, which is the one story in the collection that I had heard of in advance. It's, I think, one of her most famous short stories, and justifiably so. It's one that I even kind of knew the premise of already. I knew the twist going in, but that didn't spoil my appreciation of it at all. It's an incredibly powerful story, and one that is very disturbing and disturbingly relevant. Elsewhere in the book, Le Guin also describes herself as the most arboreal sci-fi writer, and this year I have developed a real love of trees, so that kind of ties in nicely with what I've been thinking about a lot recently anyway. So I particularly loved a story called Direction of the Road, which is written from the perspective of a tree. So if you're not familiar with Le Guin already, I would say that The Wind's 12 Quarters could be a good way into her work if you like short stories. It certainly gives you a really good overview of at least the first decade of her writing, and would maybe give you a hint as to whether you would prefer to explore her more fantasy-based or her more sci-fi style stories. And of course, if you're already familiar with her novels but haven't read her short stories, then if you're a fan, I would definitely recommend them. I'd like to give an honourable mention to The Third Policeman by Flann O'Brien. This is a book that's been on my radar for a long time because it inspired one of my favourite experimental albums, A Fierce Pancake by Stump. If you're a fan of Captain Beefheart and that sort of thing, and you haven't heard Stump, then I highly recommend that album. But anyway, The Third Policeman had been recommended to me a few times over the years, and obviously recommended by Stump having been inspired by it. But it was Mark from the Book Thing that finally kind of tipped me over the edge and encouraged me, inspired me to actually read it. And I really enjoyed it. It's probably the weirdest book I've read this year, which, in a year where I also read Titus Grown, is kind of an achievement, I think. Yeah, if you're a fan of the films of David Lynch or maybe Charlie Kaufman, then The Third Policeman might be right up your street. It's a very strange, surreal book which starts out, I think, feeling kind of pleasantly whimsical and gradually becomes increasingly disorienting and unsettling in a very effective and very enjoyable way. If you like that sort of thing. So, yeah, highly recommend for fans of weird shit. Moving on to my cinematic highlight of the month. I've been trying to get back into watching more films recently, partly as a way of luring myself away from the stressful world of the internet. So I've been watching more films recently, and one particular director that I've been watching a lot of is Yasujiro Ozu, and I particularly enjoyed rewatching Tokyo Story. This is the third in a loose trilogy of films which all star Setsuko Hara as characters called Noriko, different characters each time, but it is a loose trilogy known as the Noriko trilogy. Tokyo Story is the story of an elderly couple who travel to Tokyo to visit their adult children and also their daughter-in-law, Noriko, who is the widow of their late son who died in the war. But the couple find that their children don't really have time for them, and in fact they seem to find their presence a bit of a burden. It's a very, very sad and delicately told story which is able to kind of appreciate both sides, both generations' perspectives. It never kind of fully condemns or celebrates either side of the family, but ultimately it's a bittersweet story about change and progress and the inevitability of change and loss. It's a film that I had seen before more than 10 years ago, and I enjoyed it at the time, but I think rewatching it now when, spoiler alert here, but rewatching it now when I have lost a parent makes the story cut a lot deeper, by which I mean I watched it through tears and copious sobbing. It's an incredible, beautiful film, one of many that Ozu made, which, he's becoming a real favourite of mine, and I can't recommend Tokyo Story enough, as long as you're up for a good cry. I'm hoping that maybe sometime soon I'll be able to make a more comprehensive video about my rediscovery of my love of cinema. It's something that I'm referring to as Project Glowing Rectangle, the aim being to divert my attention away from the bad rectangles, my phone and my laptop, the internet, and redirect it towards a more nourishing oblong, films. So, hopefully I'll make a video about about more of the films that I've been loving recently. But moving on, recently, as part of a concerted effort to spend less time online, I've carved out a little bit of my daily schedule to listen to music with absolutely no other distractions, no chatting, no scrolling, no nothing. I often even turn out the lights and close my eyes and just focus entirely on the music. And one of my most rewarding and emotional listening experiences of October was revisiting one of my favorite albums that I hadn't heard for a while, and that was Blue by Joni Mitchell from 1971. I'm sure you're already familiar with it, but if not, it's a classic folky singer-songwriter type album, and the songs are largely about relationships, often failed relationships, and yeah, it's just an incredible, beautiful album with some of the best lyrics that I've ever heard in an album. So yeah, if you're looking for a good cry again, then I heartily recommend Blue by Joni Mitchell. Although I will warn you that now that it is coming on Christmas, they're cutting down trees, they're putting up reindeer and singing songs of joy and peace. The song River is a particularly dangerous one to listen to, and you may never hear Jingle Bells the same way again. Anyway, I think that will about do it for today. So why not let me know in the comments what you've enjoyed reading or watching or listening to lately. Maybe let me know any other short story writers you would particularly recommend. I've just bought a collection of short stories by Roger Zelazny, who is mentioned by Ursula Le Guin in the foreword of one of her stories. So I was curious about him. I've not started that book yet, but we'll see how that goes. But that's about it from me today. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.